Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope it's been a good day for you today, and let's continue that those good vibes going on. I want to welcome you to the Plasma Milestone within the Internet Computer. We're celebrating the accomplishments of all that has gone on in terms of governance on the Internet Computer, primarily in 2024, and also looking forward into 2025 to see what's coming up. But if you're a governance nut, and a lot of people within the Internet Computer community are, you're in the right place here. I'm joined with some phenomenal guests. We've got Jennifer and Andrew from DFINITY. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing great.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Awesome. We've also got Goraz, Wyatt, and Snassi from the community who are going to talk through about, they're all people who've led an SNS, and they're going to talk through what governance means to them and to their project as well, coming up in a little bit. If you have questions, if you have comments, feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll go ahead and bring them up. I'm already seeing a lot of you guys just saying cheers and everything. And so thank you to the 8-year gang and to all the ICP community. But let's start first with Andrew and Jennifer. 2024 was, I think, a pretty pivotal year, not just for governance on ICP, but I believe actually just governance in crypto in general. I get the feeling we've kind of turned a page in DAOs in terms of making them more efficient and broadening the spectrum. Where do you guys want to start with in terms of like what happened in 2024, what we're celebrating with the Plasma Milestone? And as we begin, I'll pull up the blog entries. I highly recommend everyone check out the DFINITY Medium page, where you'll find these two blog entries related towards all the accomplishments. If I start here, Andrew, walk us through kind of what you saw in 2024 that's worth highlighting.
Yes. So I suggest everyone to read the article. I think it highlights all the accomplishments that happened, all the interesting numbers that accompanied us last year. And while 2022 and 2023 were really exciting years for the SNS and ICP's governance in general, given that the first SNS launched in 2022, and then at the year's end, we just had a single one with a couple of proposals. People are pushing out some motion proposals. We see 23 listed here, and then 2023 saw the first quote-unquote real SNSs, where real ICP dApps launched their SNS and they decentralized their governance. However, I think 2024 was almost as exciting or even more exciting, and I want you to, Kyle, to zoom in on this one, on this chart. I've heard from someone back in the days that you like pretty charts. So it's my pleasure to prepare you some pretty charts within this article. I hope the prettiness and the chartness of them is appropriate. So we see that in 2023, we had 14 SNSs that launched overall, including SNS1 that turned into dragons in the middle of the year, and a little over 1,000 proposals processed by these SNSs. And if you look at on the right side, in 2024, we more or less doubled the number of SNSs overall. However, the number of proposals processed by these SNSs did a 6x, which means that the governance activity on chain way outperformed the number of new SNSs. So not only the new SNSs that launched are very active, but old ones are still around and they're still doing an amazing job. And of course, this community knows this very well, but it's worth reiterating that everything that happens within an SNS DAO, any code changes need to go through proposals. So not only treasury transfers and airdrops go through proposals, but whenever a DAO needs to update certain parts of the application, like you want to change the colors or you want to optimize something in the backend, all those are going through proposals. And this allows these DAOs to manage the full application and not just small parts of it, which I think is one of the most exciting and interesting part and unique part of the ICP on-chain governance and on-chain governance systems.
Yeah, I think just to double click on that, in case I know a lot of people in crypto in general are interested in governance. They're going to see this title and they're going to say, I want to watch a live stream on governance. They may not be familiar with Internet Computer particularly, and they may be surprised by the fact that the average SNS DAO on the Internet Computer has, I mean, if I just do some quick math, that's over 200 proposals over the year. So that's, one every other day, let's say. That's a lot of proposals. And that's because the scope of what DAOs can control on the Internet Computer is so much greater than on, where they typically are, correct? Jennifer, do you mind walking through, like, what are the different types of proposals that you see, and how projects are using DAOs to govern their apps?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of different reasons, maybe why DAOs want or why apps want to be DAOs. So for most of them, they really want to kind of have more contributors. So a lot of their proposals are related to system upgrades. They also pretty much everything also from even using the treasury to pay contributors. So I think one thing that we've seen a lot is when you think about DAOs in the traditional DAOs in the Web3 sense, there's kind of this idea that DAOs really should be this autonomous running where every update that goes in, every update of a DApp should go through a proposal, and every treasury update should also go through a proposal. I think that ICP does that really well through the SNS framework. Is actually DAOs in ICP are actually creating a proposal for these. Well, maybe DAOs in other ecosystem, it's a little bit more informal. So I think, yeah, that's been really cool to see.
Love it. Yeah, there's it's a whole new world. And then I think also just in terms of structure and culture and community, in terms of, I participate in some of these DAOs, and you definitely see some where it's like, a developer says, hey, we've identified a bug or something we need to deploy pretty quickly. That developer can't just go and add that code. They have to explain the process. They have to act quickly, and then the DAO has to react quickly in terms of voting, yes or no, kind of a deal. So it's almost like a proof of decentralization is how much friction is involved in that kind of lifestyle management. Do you anticipate
that said, before we go on, what I've found with the SNS DAOs, that even though of course the proposal takes a couple of days to execute and people need to vote on it, but most SNS, the core contributors to the SNS DAOs have been incredibly responsive to bugs that the community finds. So I see a lot of bugs that people find, and then they just report on Twitter, and in a couple of hours or in half a day, there's already a proposal up to fix the issue, which is good to see.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's I always say we're reinventing. We humans are used to top-down management, and we're reinventing that as we speak. So
yeah, and I think what I like about the SNS framework is I think that previously there's this idea that DAOs potentially couldn't work. And I think the SNS framework kind of really does show that, with all the diversity of the types of DAOs that we have on ICP, everything from funding DAOs to DEXs to social applications, obviously all of them kind of have different ways that they're building to all the way to this type of stages. We have everything from teams that just launch, like Kong Swap, or teams that obviously have been ecosystem for a very long time. IC Lighthouse, all of them are going through this SNS framework and really having their community be involved. And it really just kind of shows that DAOs they're possible, right? The DAOs in which we thought DAOs should be are possible in all sorts of types of DAOs to all sorts of stages as well.
And before we move on, I want to also highlight one more pretty picture. If you can scroll up to the first one, that should show DeFi Llama. And in it, I mean, it's going to be a bit hard to see because it's a long list, but 18 out of the top 20 most active DAOs are on ICP, including the SNS itself. And then the rest of the 17 are SNSs launched on their computer. And as a small caveat, not every single DAO is on this platform, but that's it's up to the DAOs from other chains to join the list. But I think it's really impressive, and it really shows how active these DAOs are. And the number is measured, or the metric is measured by the successful proposals, a number of successful proposals in the last 30 days.
Yep. Yeah. So anyone following along at home, you can see this at DeFi Llama /governance. Just going straight down, you have to get to 11 before you have a DAO that's not from the ICP community. And then even then, I'm seeing CongSwap, we're going to hear from Garaz. I'm seeing Sneed, we're going to hear from Snassi. Don't want to put you on the spot, why, but you got to get some more successful proposals going through there. But yeah, you can coming through and you see some big weights like Aave and Balancer on this that are kind of mixed within all the ICP apps. Again, the scope of what you can do on ICP is different. So maybe we've stacked the deck a little bit because there's a lot more proposals you can do. Moving on, in terms of, actually, one question I want to ask is, let me come back here to this blog. When I look at a bar chart like this, I see this nice up and to the right. What do you guys think is in store for 2025? Are we going to see similar proposal to app ratios? Are we going to see the number of apps increasing? Take just a guess at 2025 for me.
It's a bit like price predictions. They're never correct. Although, it's a good question. I guess it's up to the SNSs, but I think projecting into the future, it's already been a good year, and I don't see any signs of the SNSs slowing down. I mean, right now as we speak, there are 2 SNS DAOs that are in the process of decentralizing, which is Alice and FOMOWell. If you haven't heard of Alice, she is the one controlling Bob, which is kind of ironic. Anyway, so yeah. Already a good start to the year.
Yeah, I see we've got some love for Alice and Bob in the comments here. I'd love to hear. Post what your favorite SNS is from the past year if you're in the comments. Let's jump over to the second part of the blog, and then I'm excited to really hear from the SNS leaders themselves. So we'll come through here. This is actually more focused around specific functionality that has been added to the SNS architecture. Andrew, do you want to kind of walk us through? I know you've been pretty heavily involved from the DFINITY end on this.
Yes, we've launched many interesting features within this Plasma Milestone that has been concluded recently. And one of them was a community request, or actually many of them are community requests. Well, one of them focused on improving the SNS upgrades, which, as we've heard, we had a DAO workshop in 2024. I think it was around the summer. And we received a lot of feedback from different SNS teams or SNS core contributors that upgrading the SNS framework itself, that is, I believe 5 canisters that control the SNS and then handle ledger and the index, root, governance, and I'm probably forgetting one. And to upgrade these, you used to have to go through an upgrade path, which required many proposals. And this year, end of last year, there was a SNS proposal launched to greatly improve this process, which means that DAOs now should be able to just submit a single proposal to upgrade to the latest SNS WASM, which I know Snazzy made a comment last year, and he can express how happy he is. I don't know if you've tried it already. Anything. The NNS dev focused mostly with the Plasma Milestone on improving user experience. We've gotten feedback that the NNS dev is good at what it does, but it's really complicated and hard to understand, and things are a little bit all over the UI. So we introduced a neurons table and a token table, and added fiat values to both. So if you log into the NNS, you should see nice, pretty numbers on the value of your portfolio, as well as a better overview of your neurons and tokens, so that you can manage them more easily. And besides that, actually, instead of me reading through and explaining all these features, I would invite anyone to go to the internetcomputer.org/roadmap, and scrolling down there, you should see the whole roadmap that we have. And close to the bottom, we have the governance and tokenomics, which is highlighted in green, Kyle, if you're looking for quickly. Visualize governance, exactly. And then on the left side there, we have Plasma. So if you close this, or scroll up. And on the left side, yeah, there you go, exactly. And then here we have Plasma, and these are all the features that were approved by the SNS last year, and now they're all in production.
Love it. This also kind of gives us a good look into what's coming up. A lot of this is NNS focused. We'll save that for another live stream coming up at the end of this month. We want to focus this one on the SNS, but you can definitely see some additional functionality coming in 2025 for the SNS. Was there anything you wanted to touch on with that, Andrew, in terms of upcoming milestones for the SNS?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
And also there's like, I also encourage people to look at the other like SNS tools that the community has also built. Even though it's not reflected on this roadmap, there's a lot of really cool tool sets out there, like such as like Cycle Ops has like an SNS cycles monitoring dashboard, IC Toolkit, which allows you to create like different proposals. And yeah, I think that there is like a list of different ecosystem tools on the Medium posts that you also take a look into that, again, isn't reflected on the roadmap.
Love it. Yep. Yeah, you see all these tools here. Yeah, it's great. So definitely check out. We'll post. I'll post the links in the comment section to all these to the 2 blog posts. But that's a great segue. Let's kind of change gears here now. Actually, hear from people who have gone through the SNS themselves. They've got the battle scars. They've got the war stories to tell. So let me pull this off 1 second. There we go. I'm going to start, Snassi. I'm going to start with you. Can you just kind of give us a background on SNEED? And you guys were really early in the SNS process, so maybe you're going to have to shake off the cobwebs on how that process went. But let's start with just first of all, what is SNEED, and give us kind of the background there.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So SNEED started in a way as SNS1. So what happened was that DFINITY launched the first SNS1, and maybe it was kind of a test token, I'm not sure, but it was said that it was a blank canvas when it launched, a blank canvas DAO for the community to kind of do anything they wanted with. So sure enough, a community formed around this, especially with a lot of builders in it, who kind of realized early on that the token may be a test token, but the SNS infrastructure for this DAO was quite real, and that it was very useful for builders who wanted to create projects and assign ownership to a real DAO. Because on ICP, on the internet computer, smart contracts are upgradable, which is not the same on all blockchains. And because they are upgradable, it's of course very important in the chain of custody or the chain of command, who can update them and when. So there are essentially 3 modes, right? You can have something that is black hole, a contract is ownership less, and that is like on many other blockchains, then it cannot be updated, which can be safe, but it's also problematic if there's a bug, because software is kind of never perfect, right? So the opposite of that is a contract that is dev controlled, which is good to the extent that you have an honest dev that want to fix bugs, but can be problematic if you have a dishonest dev that just uploads bad code suddenly and rugs your project. So a very good in between there, a very good compromise solution on kind of this trustless scale, if you will, is DAO control over a contract, where every change to the contract has to go through DAO approval. And then not only can you kind of hope that the DAO members do some vetting of these contracts, there's also the process taking some time, which means that the contract change usually doesn't go through immediately. It will take a few days, allowing you to inspect the code and see if you want to withdraw your funds or something like that. So there is a safety to having your contracts be controlled by a DAO, and that's what this early community of builders realized that SNS1 was kind of perfect for this purpose of handing over control over your projects to this DAO once they were mature enough. And this was pretty exciting, and everyone was happy building stuff, when suddenly one day, of course, everyone knows what happens. Well, the chart went to the moon, and what had happened was, of course, that Adam had come and bought a majority, 51% of the DAO to use for his Dragons project, which was very exciting for everyone. And I'm definitely a big fan and looking forward to seeing this Dragons project become a reality. But it also meant that we didn't have our blank canvas DAO anymore. So the point of SNED was to create a new DAO that could take over from SNS1 as the community's blank canvas DAO, where essentially the idea is that builders can gather and have fun building, learn about how SNSs work, and if you have an interesting project that may not have the scope that it warrants creating a brand new SNS for it, but it could still benefit from SNS infrastructure, particularly this voting of all code changes, then they can hand over control to SNED now, to SNED DAO. So that's basically the birth of SNED and what it is for. And we also kept the tokenomics, the legendary tokenomics of the original SNS1, which was a very low max cap, just 10,000 coins, and more importantly, strictly deflationary. So SNED voters don't get minted rewards, unlike most other SNSs, just like in SNS1 though, which we have tried to compensate for by creating what we call the RLL. So we have a bit of innovation going there. The RLL is the recursive liquidity loop, which means that we circulate around funds that we gain from different activities such as market making with LPs and from maturity from our 8-year ICP neuron, and use the excess from that to reward our voters. And for example, with the maturity from our SNED, from our ICP neuron, we use that ICP to buy SNED, buy back SNED, and distribute that SNED to the voters, which means we can stay strictly deflationary. So we have some innovative tokenomics going on as well that we think is interesting, that I think also is only really possible to do well on ICP. But since we're a community coin, right, we are in a way we're the opposite of what SNS1 has become, because while SNS1 now Dragons works on decentralized infrastructure, it's still centralized in ownership by now after the 51% takeover, right? So one person can control everything that happens there. And for us, the point is to have the opposite, right? We're decentralization maximalists, if you will. So for us, it's important to have decentralized infrastructure and decentralized ownership, of course. So we think it's very important for us to have a good distribution of the token. So when you said earlier there that some people may have to hurry up and do more proposals that are actually accepted, we see many of our not accepted proposals as one of our major strengths. In fact, that is what gives us credibility, that we are actually vetting proposals, and there's a real community voting, not just one team that pulls all the strings. So we see that as kind of our important value proposition to all these builders that want credible ownership of their contracts, is that we have a very active community, good distribution, and good active vetting of the proposals that the community creates. Furthermore, we also are decentralization maximalists, and we are a DAO for the community, by the community and for the community, which means that not only are we hoping that the whole community votes for proposals, we want the whole community to create proposals. And that sets us a little bit apart from many of the other SNSs that have teams that create most of the proposals and the members vote on them. Which is why I also was so happy to hear you, Jennifer, bring up some of the ecosystem, because being a DAO of builders, of course, the ecosystem is incredibly important to us, especially since ICP is like the perfect platform for composing service. It's very composable, everything you build on the platform. So for us, the ecosystem is very important to make this possible for all our members to in fact be active and create proposals, because let's face it, it wasn't that easy a year ago when it was very bare bones, and you kind of needed to understand how to use command line tools, etc., to do it mostly. Then a few options showed up, but recently I do have to plug the toolkit that you also mentioned, Jennifer, as a game changer for us. That puts the power of proposal creation into all members' hands, into everyone's hands. It's a very easy to use GUI that really just makes, including supporting generic functions, which is one of the real killer features of SNS DAOs and why they are so powerful, is that you can register basically any kind of function on the internet computer as a DAO function that the DAO can call via proposals. And even those are supported by this toolkit. So that's an amazing project that really helps us with our mission of making every DAO member a part.
So I think there's a couple things I wanted to just make sure to dive in deeper, especially as we hear from the other projects as well, that there's multiple threads of like, what's the right level of voter participation? What's the right level of, do you have more of a centralized dev team, or do you have a very decentralized dev team where people come and go? All of these things are great for experimentation, and we're seeing them all play out in real life on the internet computer. Let me also bring in Wyatt and Goraz, and then I've got some general questions around the SNS framework for all three of you. So Wyatt, I'm going in chronological order of SNSs. Knik comes next. Tell us about Knik and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, Knik actually started as a winner of the Supernova Hackathon back in 2022. We were indexing all of the front end canisters on the IC, which means on the IC you actually can have front ends for websites hosted in smart contracts. And we're the first team to go, hey, these are all these cool projects coming out for this hackathon. Let's spy on them, essentially. Let's get all the data and see what everyone else is up to. And with that, we were able to make a centralized database of basically all of the front ends hosted on blockchain. And with that, we can do various things like search engines. But what's really apparent to us very early on is that the old school way of search is not the way of the future. And from there, we immediately pivoted, saying, hey, we need to have LLM-backed type search. And that's kind of where the Knik DAO was born in 2023. And from there, we've been building out various tooling for basically using AI as the backend. One is our on-chain vector database, which feeds LLM. You can actually use it for ChatGPT or any LLM you want, but you control the database directly to modify the responses of inference. And with this, we have the developed version up right now. Like devs are already using this in production. We have B2B. But from that last year, we actually did the SNS meetup in Zurich. And from that, we had actually a lot of talk about like B2C and how we can get growth in that direction. So now for the last quarter, I would say is very focused on the B2C angle. And we're actually building a plugin to where you don't need to be a developer anymore. You just press a button, it spins up a canister, and you can have this running very quickly.
I love it. I love it. And I love the I don't even want to say pivot, the evolution of Knik, and watching you guys play a big role in something that's actually kind of outside maybe the purview of Web3 in general. So you guys are definitely trailblazers. And then coming up with Goraz on KongSwap. KongSwap's one of the more newer SNSs. So Goraz, how are you doing? Give us kind of like the background of what KongSwap is.
Yeah, so KongSwap is a DEX, an AMM DEX. We wanted to create a decentralized exchange that everybody can use. That is so easy that, we always like to say, my grandma can log into the computer, click a couple of buttons and she can get going on swapping, right? I think like we combine, or what we tried to combine was having fun with the product, but also like taking advantage of really the powerful toolkit that ICP has to offer. So our, both our backend and front end run on chain. We built the entire kind of DEX and stable memory, so that enables us to do, on some trading pairs swaps within 2 seconds or less. On average, we have like a 2 to 4 second time to swap, so that makes it like really nice and easy to use. So it's not kind of like the Ethereum or Bitcoins where your swaps are basically in minutes or like half a minute, whatever.
Your grandma can start losing money in minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So she can get rug faster. No, I mean, but that was like sort of the idea, to have like really cool tech that we can combine with a fun interface and just make it very engaging and nice to use. And this is also like what we're building towards now. So we want to kind of add a lot of new fun features, but they will be also like technically very interesting to build. So we kind of combine the fun and the tech aspect of the IC.
Love it. I love like Snassi, you had mentioned like the kind of the choices a developer makes in terms of who owns their smart contracts, and that the SNS or even just DAOifying, there's other DAOs on the internet computer that are not SNS, such as Tagger is probably the biggest one, to the pioneers to call out. But so it's an intentional decision to go SNS. And I'm always fascinated with the fact that like it provides product options, like being owned by a DAO can actually differentiate your product in ways that you can't accomplish either by being on a Web 2 tech stack or even being on like a different type of blockchain or something like that. Can you guys kind of walk me through how you see the DAOification of your project as like part of the product offering?
Sure. So for us, it's totally central. It's what it's all about for us, and we see it as something that can add value that I mentioned, because it's the code changes for projects can become vetted through the DAO process, but also that you have the credibility of holding funds and doing DeFi as a DAO. In a totally trustless way, which is, I think, also super important to us. So a very important part for us in DAOifying, as you say, our whole organization is that we have to do everything in a trustless way. And we rather wait a bit. If something is not possible to do in a trustless way yet, we rather wait until it is. Usually it eventually will become. For example, a good example is the DAO ownership of an 8-year ICP neuron in the SNS, which when we launched a year ago was not possible really to do entirely programmatically, not in an entirely trustless way at least. So when those APIs came out, we were really thrilled, because that allowed us to put in a very important piece in our RLL, recursive liquidity loop puzzle there, which we now have, and we're very happy to have up and running. And another thing that I want to plug from the ecosystem that really helps, and I think will be important to all the SNS DAOs, are another SNS called Newtonite that have their NTN vectors, which we are already using. We're using indeed a vector to a neuron vector to control our 8-year neuron. And we'll be using DCA vectors to do the buybacks that I mentioned earlier. With the maturity that comes from the neuron, it will drip, 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 be buying SNEED from the liquidity pools forever, and distribute to voters. And the distribution in turn, how does that SNEED get distributed? We can send some to voters and burn some. The ICP, indeed, we can send some to back into our 8-year neuron, and we can send some to our LPs to increase our liquidity pools. All of that can also be done with splitter vectors, from Newtonite. So that, I think, will be extremely important for all the DAOs to be able to handle their finances in a totally trustless way. So that's something we're very eager to use more of, and we're an early customer.
There is a quick plug that I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned, and correct me if you did, that SNEED is also doing some infrastructure work. So if you are planning on launching a meme-coin, I think SNEED has some functionality that could be interesting to make the launch process a bit more trustless, using SNEED lock and other
That's
tools.
right.
I don't know if you want to mention any of them.
Oh yes, that would be a great opportunity to mention indeed SNEED lock, which is a product that we have created for the DAO, owned by the DAO, of course, which also can generate revenue for the DAO that can also be distributed to DAO voters. So we can continue indeed to keep our token deflationary, but still give out DAO rewards. But the SNEED-lock point is that you can send tokens and liquidity positions currently from ICP swap. We hope that Kong swap will be next, and lock those positions with a time lock, which makes it much more safe for traders of that token to know that these liquidity positions and potentially large token positions as well won't be suddenly rugged and major positions sold. So that can help a lot with the safety of token trading. And that's a product that the first version of it was simply that you sent your LPs and your tokens to one of our canisters that had essentially methods for sending them back that could be invoked via the DAO. But in the second version of SNEED-lock, SNEED-lock 2, you have a DApp with a wallet. As usual, you send your funds or LPs to that wallet, and then you can yourself just put a time-based lock on them, so you don't need DAO to handle it. So it's totally permissionless for the user. And we hope that this will be very useful for the ecosystem.
Love it. Love it. Wyatt, I'd love to hear from you in terms of Kinnick and how you guys see being operated by a DAO as contributing to the product that you're offering.
People are often impatient, and that pushes features faster. So we've actually had some really good feedback from a lot of the community members. There's actually a bug just found the other day from a developer using Kinnick stuff. So really, like, people just being impatient and being passionate about the project is one of the biggest factors for DAOs, in my opinion. So even going forward, when we went to basically centralized exchanges, and the DAO was then ownable by anyone who was able to access those exchanges, it just opened the ecosystem up from being from ICP to a larger audience, and we plan on making it larger and larger and larger. And with that, we do get a lot of feedback and ideas and really cool people who come on who might have technical backgrounds and econ backgrounds, other types of backgrounds. They're just beneficial that I think just like a pure dev team by themselves wouldn't have. So the DAOization really allows for this more flexibility in idea structure, which I think is very unique to DAOs themselves.
Is being ran by a DAO, is that, you mentioned centralized exchanges, is that important to a centralized exchange? Does it change the conversation at all?
Yeah, it does. It disperses when actually, if you do a sale on a centralized exchange, you can list it as a DAO. It actually allows more participants in the DAO from one ecosystem to many ecosystems. So I think that's an important factor as well. If you haven't done it yet, you want to like blossom outside of ICP and get into all the ecosystems and have a little bit of a feedback loop going on. So there is a few things that there needs to be like an NPO or an entity that needs to interact with these third parties. But also when you open up to either other DEXs or other centralized exchanges, you actually get more participants in the DAO indirectly that way.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. I hadn't thought about this, but like a B2C product being controlled by a DAO is kind of an interesting dynamic that I don't know that I've thought through too much.
We'll see what happens, but the next Q1, Q2 this year should be pretty interesting.
Awesome. I love it. And Garaz, tell me what for KongSwap, what is being owned by a DAO? How does that impact your product?
I mean, it takes some of the pressure off, because when we launched, like our TVL grew quite quickly. So, you know, all of a sudden you have a couple of million in TVL on the platform. Then, you know, there's a couple of controllers, and yeah, it's kind of a DAO just takes that away. So I was the happiest when the DAO passed, and then the SNS became the controller of the backend canister, which has all the TVL. So from that, I think it's a great way to really protect economic value of, you know, whoever is the LP. The LP also has the confidence that they'll be able to see any votes passed, you know, if anything, kind of all the code is there. So at any point, you know what upgrade is coming. So if you don't agree with it, you can always pull the liquidity. So from that perspective, it's really nice. I mean, it takes a while to get going. So basically the SNS initiation is its own, like, kind of has its own learning curve. So it takes a couple of days to get familiar with it, test everything out. So I remember we did this one mistake where, you know, there's a lot of commented lines in the init YAML file. So we missed the one line of, once the SNS passes the voting, then you can set a parameter that you can start the sale within 24 hours. But if you don't set that parameter, the algorithm decides, and it's, I think, between 1 and 10 days, right? So we forgot to set that. but the algo was on our side, so we got it in 2 days, I think, which was funny. But then, yeah, once you pass, it's really about setting up your scripts. I think that kind of, I think the first couple of proposals, we basically did everything wrong. So in terms of backend upgrades and front end upgrades. But the good thing is, like, even though we uploaded the wrong WASM file, the canister didn't blow up, everything kept going. So that was a good experience, that it's a really robust system. So I think that kind of, like, in a couple of weeks, then you get a hang of it, and then it becomes more routine. So then the scripts also work, your flow works, and you can get things done pretty efficiently. So for us, I mean, most of our stuff has been really like contract updates for now, because we've been just shipping a lot of features. And also, I agree. Like, when I discovered that the toolkit, that was really nice. So I didn't have to write every proposal myself with a script. So now it's just backend and front end that runs with scripts. Everything else can be done via the toolkit. Yeah, so the tooling around it is actually really nice once you discover it.
And I would like to make another plug. I don't know if this is the right moment for it. That shout out to CodeGov, who now, from a recent initiative, they now have 2 SNS neurons. So you can pick between now, I guess, 3 or a couple, maybe even more options, that either you can follow the developer neuron that is often shared by the team. You can vote manually on proposal, in which case you should make sure that you vote on all proposals to maximize your rewards. Or you can now follow one of CodeGov's SNS neurons. So one of them is Kongswap, who is here, and then the other one is Water Neuron. And maybe as a bit of a sneak peek, there's another SNS that is now currently on the launchpad being launched. And CodeGov, I've heard CodeGov is planning to launch an SNS neuron for this specific SNS.
This is a 1 in 2 chance on your guess there.
You have a 50% chance of guessing correctly. Exactly.
Thank you. A nice little hat tip for Wenzel, who's been a community member since day one, and all the work he's done for governance on the ICP. And that's actually a great segue into final question I want to ask you guys. So I'm assuming there's a lot of, I know of a lot of apps that are interested in the SNS, most of them within the ICP community, some from outside the ICP community who are intrigued by the idea. For anyone who's planning on going through the SNS in 2025, what's the one piece of advice you'd have for them leading up into it? You've mentioned a couple, like Garaz, I love that you're open about the mistakes you guys made, but is there something that somebody should spend a lot more time focusing on, or anything like that you'd recommend? Stancy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, use the SNS testing download. I can't stress that enough. You'll be surprised, and start early, and don't publish a date that you expect to go SNS that is very close after you start trying to test this stuff. There are surprises along the way, and it takes time to figure it all out, and give yourself good margins for that, is my advice.
Love it. Wyatt, how about you? Do you have a piece of advice for a budding SNSer?
Yeah, I actually have done both things. I've done the SNS DAO, and I've also had VC-backed funded companies before, and they're two very different things, and they have very different purposes. So I would say with having an SNS DAO, what you're doing eventually is you have a token that you're striving to make more and more valuable. And with that mindset, it was like from the beginning to end, you need to have that upfront and have it public in the forums and discussing it. So I'd say lots of public discussions in the DFINITY forums is very important for that long-term goal. TGE is always a big thing with Web3 projects. And with TGE, like we have it with an SNS, right? There is a launch of a token. So it's a very different, like maybe a backwards type of way of doing it in terms of what the VC route is, which is like the TGE is the big thing. And then the token like fluctuates up and down. So keeping like the goals of the project in mind and having everything out in the public, if you're doing an SNS, is very important, in my opinion.
Okay.
Before we move on to Garaz, I would like to very enthusiastically agree with what Wyatt said, because some SNSs I feel like treat their ICP treasury as their runway, and then they can calculate how long they have before the ICP runs out. But instead, I think it's much more valuable to flip this idea and say that I want to make my token as liquid and as valuable as possible, because then you can have potentially infinite runway. And then, of course, if you produce value and the value is reflected in your token, that also gives back to the community who trusted you, the founders in the beginning of this process. So thanks, White, for shouting that out. I completely agree.
Yeah, I also agree with Andrew. I think like we did this, when we launched, we put quite a big chunk of our treasuries actually in the LP. So, the token's liquid. We also have very short vesting terms. So our objective was also to get, the token in people's hands as soon as possible and not have 5-10 years lockups. I think, once you're fully diluted, then, the project needs to be able to show value, show utility for people to actually use it. And I think for anybody doing the SNS, I think there's no right or wrong. So you'll have two camps: people who want you to do it and people who don't want you to do it. So there's kind of like a fine balance you need to thread between when is the product ready, and when do you think it's ready, or when the community thinks it's ready. So some people will say you need like a product market fit evolved, making revenue, then you can SNS. Other people will say go early. I think you'll have both camps, and also throughout the sales process, just maybe sometimes have a bit of a thick skin, because all the comments will not always be nice. So not everybody's just gonna throw flowers at you. But at the end, it's a super cool experience. You're happy once it's done, and then you can get back to building. Because I think for me, actually, the scariest part was basically when you start the process, and after the NNS approves the token sale, then it's about, in reality, it's about 2 weeks where you have no control over the application. So that's like the scariest part, because there are emergency proposals, but you don't really want to go that route. So for us, we launched the DEX. It was running for 1 month, and then for 2 weeks you couldn't do any updates, and you were just watching and hoping everything will work and nothing breaks for 2 weeks, because you don't have any means to do anything. So I think that's kind of, if you do it, make sure your app is super stable for at least 2 weeks before you get your hands on it again.
I love it. I love it. That's 2 weeks for you take a vacation, take your mind off of it, and hope the best when you come back.
Not really, but
well, I really appreciate all your time here today. I'm reading through the comments. A lot of love for all three of your projects. You see some other projects got some love as well in the comments. And so, yeah, just really great to see the progress that you three gentlemen have made this year. I love the vision. It's such a variety. And that's, I keep coming back to the experimentation mindset, the variety, the let's approach things from a different way than what we've seen before, even within the SNS framework, has been phenomenal to see. And that's kind of how I imagine we'll continue to evolve into 2025. Everyone watching, I want to thank you so much for your time. You can see where you can find each of these projects, either at their URL or at their X handle, right there in everyone's names. Jennifer and Andrew, got to thank you for your time and your dedication to bettering and improving and evolving the SNS framework. And we will see you all in 2 weeks for an NNS focused live stream. Until then, keep up the votes and keep up the innovation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.